Thank the maker.
Good morning, KCL, and welcome to Thank the Maker. This is King's College London's only premier creativity talk show. We are coming to you live from the top of Bush House Southeast in the heart of London. And for those that don't know, this is actually the former headquarters of the BBC World Service, and don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure we're in the studio that they used to broadcast from, which is pretty neat. Anyways, this is Thank the Maker. And on this show, each week, we bring on creatives from in and around King's and London, and we talk about their projects, about creativity in general, and really about anything else we want to talk about. I'm your host, Clay Ballard. I am a postgrad student here at King's College London studying global media industries. And today, we have a very special guest. We have our guest, Andrina Voegele. She is also a postgrad student here at King's studying the same thing as I, global media industries. And Andrina has worked for the past several years as a writer. She's written everything from articles to books. She's had articles published on Thought Catalog, and she's also worked a bit in PR and, most interestingly to me, as a ghostwriter. So please do join us over the next hour as we explore the culture of creativity and creativity at large here on this show. We hope you listen in. Thanks so much. Welcome back. Andrina, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It is Tuesday. We normally go and broadcast on Monday, but it is Tuesday morning, and so we're a little bit further into this week. How's this week been treating you?
Fine, I guess. I'm a little tired, but
yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah. How many lectures, going into the nitty-gritty here because we are on the same exact postgrad program, but how many lectures did you have yesterday?
3 back-to-back.
Goodness.
They all got moved.
All of them?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Literally all of them got moved because we all had guest speakers, so
yeah.
It was 6 hours of listening to very interesting people.
Goodness. That is a long day, and especially when they're all 2 hours. Yeah.
Yep.
Jeez Louise. Well, let's move on to the meat of this. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How would you, I'm asking you to introduce yourself here, but how would you introduce yourself, say, if you were talking to somebody about your creative projects?
God, big question. I'd say I'm a writer. I have been for literally my entire life.
Right.
And yeah, I'm a postgrad student who's also a writer. Got to make cash somehow, and also just for my own sake. And I've always been writing, and then eventually I was able to turn into a little bit of a career. So doing that on the side is good for my soul.
Yeah, and so are you doing both the postgrad thing and the writing thing side by side?
Yeah.
Wow. So how does that work out scheduling wise? Does it work well?
It does. I suffer a bit of insomnia, so at least at night I tend to write the best kind of when the rest of the world is sleeping.
Yeah.
And it is since I do more creative things, it's actually a really good balance to school. Because it's just, obviously, that's a lot more the academic side.
Right.
And then my own writing is more from, what I'm thinking, feeling, and articles that are just, interest me.
Fantastic. So before we go deep into your writing and what you've been working on, what brought you to London, first and foremost? What brought you to King's?
I've always loved London. I went to boarding school in England, actually. Fell in love with the culture. And when my visa in the States ran out, I had to move somewhere. And I figured, why not go to this country I love?
Yeah. So did you do undergrad in the States then?
Yeah, I went to NYU.
Awesome. Great school. And where are you originally from, for listeners? I know all this, by the way. I'm just trying to give some context.
I'm from Switzerland, hence my difficult last name.
Yep, I attempted it.
You did pretty well, actually.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's great to hear. So, okay, you're at King's.
Yep.
You're studying global media industries. What did you do in undergrad, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, God. My major was global liberal studies with a concentration in contemporary culture and creative production, and a minor in new Romance languages, French and Spanish. Okay. Very American.
Yeah. Wow. Let's say you're, at a networking event and you're trying to explain what you studied. What do you say?
Issue of my life. Creativity and communications with a focus on branding.
Lovely. That's a really nice spin. That's really great. I have a similar problem with my undergraduate degree where it's all it's super liberal artsy. It's like...
What did you do again?
So I studied peace, war, and defense. I double majored. Peace, war, and defense, and global studies. Just global studies. What does that mean?
Yeah, same. And everyone's like, how do you do that?
And then I minored in public policy. So normally what I button down into is just I say I studied IR, even though my school didn't have an IR program. I kind of constructed it myself.
You're learning how to rule the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a funny story. A little bit of a diversion, but so I taught in Malaysia for a year, about 2 years ago before I came to King's. And the school that I was paired with, I didn't get to choose, got my profile. And they saw that I studied peace, war, and defense, and I had a strong interest in terrorism studies. And these poor people were like, we have a CIA agent coming to teach our students. America is sending an implant. And they didn't tell me this till halfway through the year. And I was like, no. It was from an academic perspective, and I'm more interested in just global relations in general. But yeah.
We're being surveyed by the government over there.
Right. Well, that's what they thought. Yeah. I think it scared the shit out of them. But
it's good. It gives you some authority.
Yeah. No, with the kids especially. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably got cool factor by it. They were like, wow, we have a spy as a teacher.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go back to you as a writer.
Sure.
What? Let's start with any projects you're working on right now. Are you working on anything right now? It's okay if you're not.
Yeah, I do my writing for Thought Catalog.
Yeah.
Since I'm a regular contributor there, so I do that, and I'm always writing short stories and see kind of where those go, and sometimes turn into books and sometimes not.
Amazing. So when you say short stories, are those fiction? Are they nonfiction? What?
They're usually fiction. Yeah. Cool. For the most part, I've tried nonfiction, and it's just not quite my genre.
Right. Well, I guess what I was going to pose is for your Thought Catalog articles, what are you generally writing about there? Because I assume it wouldn't be short stories.
Well, Thought Catalog is a digital youth magazine.
Okay.
So it depends a bit. They are kind of more personal pieces, even though I take a lot of creative liberties, which a lot of people are like, oh my God, you put all your life out there. I'm like, no, yeah. It's not quite like that. But also just sometimes listicles. I just wrote one, this is going to sound bad, but I just wrote one about 10 brutally honest reasons people cheat. So that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or versus also just more of personal exposure pieces. So
interesting.
Depends a bit. I have a lot of creative freedom there, which is nice.
Right. And when you're coming up with ideas for articles like that, are you drawing mostly from personal experience? Are you just kind of writing and filling a market gap? What?
Bit of everything. Sometimes
Yeah.
it also has to do with conversations I recently had with people or friends, sort of if I know that happens to be a lot of my friends are going through heartbreak, I'm like, oh, maybe I should write, it's kind of the season for that, write an article about that. The cheating was inspired because I recently, for some reason, had a lot of conversations with people about cheating, and I learned some interesting facts and things, so I kind of wrote about that.
Another diversion, because I'm just curious and I want to follow this road. What have you learned about cheating?
I guess those kind of always, but apparently the biggest reasons for it are never really about your partner.
Fascinating.
They're really about more you.
There is a fantastic podcast that I'm going to recommend called Where Should We Begin? And it is with this woman named Esther Perel. And she basically the whole premise of the show is live couples counseling.
Oh my God, I'm into it.
It's what I recommend to people when people
great.
are looking for podcasts. It's incredible. And like, I don't care that much about relationship dynamics, but it is like, it is the most voyeuristic feeling sitting in that room.
I'm so into it.
It's great. Anyways, the reason I bring it up is they bring that up all the time, especially when you have infidelity and these relationships that are being talked about. It's never about the partner. It's always about some outward want or unmet need or something like that.
Yeah, validation and loneliness and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Anyways, interesting little diversion we went on there. But yes, where should we begin? Esther Perel, strongly recommend.
I'm so going to listen to that.
Yes, please do. Now, for your short stories, are you putting those out there? Are those mostly for you? Is that more of a writing exercise? Tell us more there.
It's a bit everything. I sometimes submit them to competitions.
Okay.
And yeah, there are, for me, I just like really enjoy writing. It's kind of like I don't have a journal, so stories are sort of how I go through my day, even if they have like nothing to do with my daily thing. It's like the emotions. I'll write something sad, or if I'm sad, or anger or whatever. So it is a bit for me, but I also submit them to competitions. And my editor, I always kind of talk to her if something has like potential to turn into something bigger. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Interesting. So how did you? I know you've said you've been writing your entire life, but how did you get into kind of the working side of it? Because I feel like that's a place that a lot of people have a hard time with. Is they might put the label of writer on themselves and do a lot of writing, but they have a hard time actually getting paid for doing something like this. So like, what is your story? How did you get into this?
How did I get into it? Oh yeah, actually, so I started with my first book, which I wrote when I was 14.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I was very bored.
You were very bored.
No, sort of.
What was that? What do you write about as a 14-year-old?
It was a fantasy novel. That one was actually came. It was at the time where Twilight was big and all that.
Yeah.
And I'd always kind of liked vampires, but I was on the firm believer side that vampires should be. I was going to write a story where they're the bad guys again, and then this whole world. It's a fantasy novel that plays in a different world, and that just kind of came out of it, and it just kind of snowballed from there. But it was like, even when I was little, I remember I was like 7 or 8, and I told my mom, I was like, I'm going to write a book one day. And like every mom, she was like, oh, of course, sweetie, you are. And then at 14, I was like, Mom, here's my book. What do I do about this? And she was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
But it was actually, my mom had met an editor at an event, and I was at the time applying for boarding schools and stuff. So, and I had read essays, and my mom was like, oh, like, my daughter was writing these essays right now. And she's like, oh, you can send one through at some point. If I mean, she was like, you're really good. I really enjoy it. Do you have anything you write? And I was like, actually, fun fact, I did just finish a manuscript. And she was like, okay, well, let's have a read. And kind of worked from there.
Okay. Was that your novel you wrote when you were 14?
Yeah.
Wow. So you were able to like get that published for real?
Yeah, it's out there.
Incredible. Wow. So when did you, I'm just curious, when did you see did you see any money from that? Like as a 14,
I think it's going into some account somewhere.
Okay.
We didn't like hugely promote it because like the law splits in with like as child work, so to speak, if you promote it.
Yeah.
And I really just more put it out there for me. But yeah, it's going into an account somewhere. If you buy on Amazon, I make a little bit of money, so it's nice.
Incredible. And you mentioned your editor earlier. Is that the same person that you just mentioned then, or
we've moved on?
Okay, you've moved on.
Yes.
Your young editor.
Yes.
Okay, I see. So what kind of followed after that? Were you just like, I can do this. I can write and sell.
I still don't know if I can write and sell. It seems to be working, but no, it was just kind of, I just kind of kept writing, and then eventually came my second. I was busy with school and stuff, and then eventually came my second book. And after that, I was like, well, books, that's kind of a lot of time effort. And I was like always writing for school papers and stuff like that, and I just eventually started submitting to sites online, and I just kind of, with Thought Catalog as well, I pestered them, and I just sent them articles, and I was like, please take me, and eventually they're like, okay, you're really annoying, sure.
Yeah.
You can talk to an editor, and now I work for them for the past 3 years.
Wow, that's super interesting.
Just be persistent, guys. Annoy everyone, it's going to work off.
Oh, man. So do most of your novels, are they stuff that how do I phrase this question? You feel like you need to write? Like, do you have an idea and you're like, I'm going to write this down? Or do you sit with a blank page and like kind of the book comes before the content where you're like, I need to write a book. What am I going to write? Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, go ahead. Take it whichever way.
I'm gonna see how this goes. Kinda. I don't even know. I usually have, with most of my stories and the books as well, I have like an idea of where I want to start, just because I find it a good like intro in some ways, and I know exactly where it ends.
Okay.
That's always the two things I start with, which drives my editors crazy because they're like, "We need an outline." I'm like,
Right.
"No, it's fine. We'll see what happens." So kind of, it works with that, and then it's usually that I have on my phone like a whole list on my notes of like phrases that I like, just things that come to me every day, and then usually I build stories and my books as well around those. I'm like, oh, this seems to be all like kind of in this mood of this kind of character, and then I kind of work it in from there.
Yeah, that seems so. I've spoken to a couple writers on the show, and that seems to be a really common tool.
Yeah.
Is when you're out and about, recording and writing down,
totally.
whether they're random thoughts that pop into your head or random like things you overhear from other people.
Yeah, I do that too.
And that just forms like the basis of a story for you, or it starts to.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it just comes from like, not even just inspiration can strike everywhere, but more just, I do think you need to live a life to be able to write sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that's just kind of where it comes from. And you never know what tidbit might end up in a story or be like the line that everyone's into in the end or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've shared this on the show before, but I always think about it when I talk to writers about this. I do improv. Just a quick pub. I have a show coming up next Wednesday on the 27th. Details to be confirmed. But yeah, I do a similar thing, and it's just interesting, the crossover between creative genres of like performing on stage and writing. Both seemingly very different things. But improv, you're essentially writing on stage. And what I do before shows is I'll just go out and walk around or sit on a bench and just watch people, because I want to be reminded, like, what do just normal people do? What are behaviors that are just out there that I could replicate on the stage and people will instantly recognize? So it's always interesting when I hear like similar processes among other art.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of creatives and artists is just, it's people watching, it's recognizing, it's being an observer and being able to bring that through in your art to others, that they recognize it. Like, I think that's same with music or movies, whatever. It's when you can see yourself in something is when you connect with it.
Right. That was a beautiful definition.
Thanks. I do it for a living.
So what I've been so excited to talk to you about is this whole concept of ghostwriting.
Yeah.
Can you, for people that don't know, explain what ghostwriting is?
Ghostwriting is basically you write under someone else's name or for them. A lot of time that person might be dead for a long time or never even existed. So yeah, you basically write books and don't get credit for it. The basic of it.
It's so interesting though to me. So you've obviously had books, maybe I'm wrong here, but you've had books published under your name, and you've also had books published under other people's names.
Yep.
Is essentially what ghostwriting is.
Yeah.
Was it a similar process to get involved in that? Are they in the same pocket of industry, or are they the same companies that you're working with, the same editors?
That actually, ghostwriting kind of happened by accident. I was always really intrigued by it because a couple years ago there was this teen series called The Click that I loved when I was a girl, and then I found out that this author was like, I was like, I want to be her. And then I found out this author isn't real, and it's all ghostwriting. Broke my 14-year-old heart. But I was suddenly like, ooh, this is an interesting career. And then my teacher in college, one of my writing teachers, actually wrote for that series. And she was like, yeah, like you were very good at putting your voice to different things. Because whenever we did writing exercises, I kind of could try different genres, and it usually worked, which not every writer does. And then she was like, yeah, like, do you want to get put in touch with my people? You can, like, audition for ghostwriting. And so that's sort of how I slid into it.
Okay, so you have to audition. Is that a thing?
I don't know if it applies to every project, but you kind of do. They give you like the first couple outlines for the first chapter or whatever, and you write it. And so do a couple of other people. Like, you have samples. They have samples of you on file, so they kind of can see what voice you can do and how you go into it. And you kind of also put in a little description of like what you want, like what kind of genre you're interested in writing, or what kind of age group. And then when someone chooses you for a project, they ask you to write the first chapter and see if, you can put your voice to it and fit in with everyone else, what they've written for it. So that's at least how I've gone through the processes. And then I've also had a couple of projects where they know my voice and that it works, and then they instantly just approach me, which is really nice because it's really frustrating when you write a chapter and then it doesn't get used, and you're like, great, that was a lot of work.
Yeah, right. So typically, and this is coming from someone that does not understand ghostwriting, it's a team of people that work on a single book? Would that be true? Or
not the writing part. You get, at least in my experience, I get the outline of the book and each chapter very clearly. You get like character arcs, like a lot more planning than I ever put into my books.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then you basically just put the words to it and you write it. And as opposed to your own books, the editor, like as soon as I submit the final copy, it's out of my hands unless there's big rewrites. Mm-hmm. And then the editor is usually kind of a person, especially with the series, who's the same editor for everything. So there's some consistency through it all, which is nice because, like, I do like editing, but it's also the most tedious of processes. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of nice not to have to deal with that. Right.
So as you're speaking, I'm kind of drawing similarities. Recently in one of our classes for global media industries, we've been talking about this concept of formats.
Yep.
And for those that don't know, you basically, formats are these TV shows that you'll find in like across borders. I'm doing a really poor job of explaining it right now, but it's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? There's an English version, there's an American version, there's probably a Bangladeshi version. There's one in like every territory, but they are actually licensed ideas that are then given to local production groups. So it strikes me as quite similar, where you're not crossing borders necessarily. Maybe you are. But you have like a central editor that's kind of taking these outlines, these arcs, giving them to authors in the same way that a producer would give the Bible of the TV show to a local showrunner. Yeah. Do you see similarities there?
Yeah, no, it kind of is like that. And it's also the general people who actually don't know who makes the decisions about where the story goes. I think that depends a little bit on who owns the rights to the series or the book. But yeah, it is very much like that.
Interesting. And from an artistic integrity perspective, how do you? So obviously, ghostwriting pays the bills.
It really does.
Yeah, you're getting paid. But how do you feel about it as an author, as an artist? Is it like a threat against you? How do you feel about it, generally speaking?
I mean, I really enjoy it. It's cool because with this, I walk in a bookstore and I see books I know I've written on the shelf, and I'm like, haha, I know this, no one else does, but it's fine. So it's definitely cool like that. I see it as an exercise for me. It doesn't infringe on me as a writer in my own right, because I get to try voices that aren't necessarily my style, and it doesn't fit with who I am as a writer, but it's a great exercise, and I get to write stories that I never would in my own personal life. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's an issue. I'm sure there are writers who have issues with it. Right. But I also, I make a point of not working on projects where I'm literally writing for someone who's out there. It's either people who are dead or who don't actually exist.
I see. Okay.
Because I'm like, I don't know, I don't want one specific person taking credit for it.
Yeah.
But that's just me personally.
So you do make that decision to choose projects based on that kind of criteria.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd qualify to actually represent someone, because obviously that takes a whole other level of getting to know that writer, person, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that's the criteria I just take.
Gotcha. Yeah. Really, really interesting. And it's fascinating to me how they do kind of, we've already touched on this, but give you that structure, those arcs, the outline, and then you kind of build I'm imagining a tree. I don't know why, but you have the branches and you're putting the leaves on.
I don't think you realize how trees grow, but yes.
Yeah. Maybe we're decorating a Christmas tree or something. I don't know.
There you go. That's a good one.
So to kind of go back to your studies now, before we take a quick break, why? So we talked about why London and probably why King's. It's probably much the same, but why global media industries? Why this MA?
I ask myself that every day. No, I'm joking. Me too. Kind of. We're winging it here. No, I mean, I'm obviously a part of the media industries as being a writer, and I wanted to just see it through a little bit of a different lens of basically more the background rather than being the creative. I think it also just gives you more agency, at least as a writer, when I can be like, I know a bit what's happening and the forces at work, and I'm not just like a pawn in it, if that makes sense.
No, totally.
And I mean, with my undergrad as well, I think in the world we live in, there's just so much jobs are rarely clear cut these days, and it's not like you go down one road all the time. And I think this kind of MA, especially with the global life I live, just really suited not narrowing it down.
Yeah. So you do live quite a global life. How many countries have you lived in total?
Only 3.
Yeah. Okay. Do you see yourself going beyond the UK?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I get restless really easy.
Sure. Where would you go next? Because I guess that's a nice part about being a writer is you're not really grounded to a location. But yeah, where would be next for you?
I honestly don't know. I've always wanted to move to Dubai. I've never been, but I just kind of like that idea. Or somewhere in Asia. I travel a lot there and spend a lot of time in Asia, so I would love to live over there. Or honestly, like anywhere really. Like I'm open to anything unless it's like a war zone or a conflict. I'm into it.
Yeah.
My mom might have a veto once in a while, but other than that, like I don't know. I want to see it all,
Yeah. And do you draw inspiration? I mean, this is a gimmicky question, but do you draw inspiration from like the places you've been in your work? I feel like that would be a major
absolutely
source.
More even so the people I meet, because you just see perspectives that I never even considered necessarily. So I think that even more than the people. Then again, I think people make a place.
Yeah. Very, very good point. Yeah. What's been your favorite place that you've lived in or been to so far? Let's say been to, because that widens it a bit.
Oh, God, people ask me that all the time. I really don't know. It depends, because like I was in Myanmar shortly after it opened, which was just super interesting to see, but I wouldn't say it was like my favorite, but it was definitely one of the most interesting places. You've been, right? Yeah,
I've been to Myanmar as well, and it wasn't right when it opened, but it was in 2017, I want to say. But it's not my favorite country, but I consistently list it as one of my favorite trips, just because it's so far behind, and I don't mean this in like a bad way, but it's just not as developed as its neighboring countries.
Yeah, it's not global in the same way.
It's a different world. It's not as connected. They got their first fast food restaurant ever like a year ago. They
get so excited.
I'm sure they are over the moon. I know I was. No, just kidding. I tried to eat the local food. Tried. But it was a really, really interesting country to be in, just because of how cut off it was, and just there is something to be said about like how globalization and the internet and like free entry and exit kind of changes the place over time to be more universalized, so to speak.
Yeah, like I wonder if I went back now, because I was there like 2 years after it opened, so I'm sure it's like a different world by now.
Yeah, I really think it is. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, so it depends. But then like India, for example, is always going to be close to my heart, and I love going back there. So that's always one of my favorite trips.
Amazing. So we are going to take a quick break here. So I asked you, as I ask all of my guests, to suggest a song for our break. You sent me one. Would you mind introducing it?
Oh, God. I forgot which one I sent you.
Trippin'. Becoming Young.
I will admit I asked a friend for a recommendation because I get told repeatedly that I have terrible taste in music. But I found this song like a couple of days ago, and I've been like obsessed. It's my morning song. It's such a good vibe.
Great. Well, let's give it a listen, and we will be right back.
I can't help myself, I'm hanging on your every move. And I know I shouldn't call, but when I'm alone, girl, I miss you. And the way you touched me when it was all brand new. Now I'm hurting now like I never wanted you. But you know I never tell the truth. So come on closer, won't you give me everything? Wrap my soul up in a dream of your reality. Yeah, intoxicate my body with the way you look at me. Cause this passion just might take me to my knees. Oh, you know I think about you. But I can't tell you why. I've been tripping without you. So give me one more night. Give me one more night to dream about you. you. I don't wanna play pretend, acting like we could be just friends. Oh no. Cause you got that thing I need, and I can't get you out my head, my head. And you know these secrets got me spinning out, cause girl, I want you. And the way you kiss me like there ain't no rules. Now I'm tripping and I can't keep my cool. Cause I know that you want me to. So come on closer, won't you give me everything? Wrap my soul up in a dream of your reality, yeah. Intoxicate my body with the way you look at me. Cause this passion just might take me to my knees. Oh, you know I think about you, but I can't tell you why. I've been tripping without you. So give me one more night. Give me one more night to dream about. Might be in too deep, it's always a mystery. But I know that I can't sleep, but I got you next to me. But this is what I always wanted. Now I can't shake the feel of your lips now. So come on closer, won't you give me everything? Wrap my soul up in a dream of your reality, yeah. Intoxicate my body with the way you look at me. Cause this passion just might take me to my knees. Oh, you know I think about you, but I can't tell you why. I've been tripping without you. So give me one more night. Give me one more night to dream about you.
And welcome back. This is Thank the Maker. We've got our guest, Andrina Voegele.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Voegele, yeah, that's actually impressive.
Voegele.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, getting better
German
every
skills.
day. Really not my best. But yeah, thanks so much for being on the show. And we were just listening to Trippin' by Becoming Young.
Morning songs.
Morning song. You gotta have one. I'm trying to think what mine is. I really like, this is more of like my wind down song, but This Must Be the Place by Talking Heads.
Ooh, I do like that song. But that's I feel like that's an evening song.
Yeah. It always gets me like nostalgic and...
What's the story behind it?
No, I don't know. I used to listen to it when I was abroad, and it's like, you know, it's got themes of like being home and like...
Yeah, I get
that. I don't know. It's great. It makes me all sinty, as I would say.
Oh, God. Let's not.
Anyways, you're a writer. Yes. Obviously, we've been talking about it for the last half hour.
For anyone who wasn't listening.
For anyone that wasn't listening. What's next? Do you see yourself after this degree, after graduating? Yeah, what comes next for you?
Yes, I will let you know if I figure it out.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so let's go to the, for those that aren't aware, King's career has 3 categories. The first is discover, the second is focus, and the third is action. Which category would you put yourself in as a career finder right now?
Okay. Actually, I went to Career Talk a couple of days ago. Discover, I think I'm always in the discover
Yeah,
phase.
right? Okay. I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here because I do take issue with the way King's Careers frames this. These are not singular categories.
Not at all.
You are across them all the time. Mm-hmm. For people that don't know, it's divvied up into discover, focus, and action. I think discover being like you don't really know what you want to do, so you got to explore multiple opportunities. Focus being like okay, honing in on which opportunities are of interest, and then action being like taking action on specific opportunities. King's Careers, hire me, please.
Yeah, you read the catalog well.
Yeah, I don't have anything in front of me right now. I take issue with it. It's so, anyone is going to be between those categories or in all categories at once. Like I personally think I am in the action stage. If I wanted to go into like nonprofit world, like I can apply for that right now. But I'm also in the discover phase in terms of creative careers. I'm in the focus and phase in terms of like communications careers. I'm all over the place. And I'm going to all different events because of it. But yeah,
you do everything, as I've told you many, many times. But no, I completely agree with you. It is, you know, you're always and I think you always are in different stages because suddenly you see things you didn't know were out there, or like you kind of figure it out and you try. I think especially nowadays, like everyone kind of plans multiple career paths and then kind of see what happens. Yeah. So I do think they should be a little more, mishmashed. But also they feel very like, I don't know, like everything is like by getting it, sure, career, but like all the talks I've gone to, it's very much like figure out what you want, your values, like blah, blah. And I mean, that's important, but I do think it's so focused on like making a career. Also, people could keep studying. Like, they never talk about that either.
I agree. I mean, it's a difficult world, and it's a changing world too in terms of careers, both for, you know, larger kind of like the grad schemes and things, and for the more informal, to use a word from our studies, creative careers. I went to a careers talk the other day for people in the creative industries, and the thing they kept harping on was, we are trying to change as an industry. We are trying to get rid of this, what's the word? You know, you have to know someone to get in. Nepotism and networking.
Really the part of global world is like knowing people. I mean, like, you know, it used to be like 6 degrees of separation between you and anyone. Now it's, I think, like 4.5 or something. Yeah. And that is only because of networking and knowing people. So, like, it's just at the heart of being interconnected. Yeah.
I mean, is there a lot of networking within your writing world, would you say?
Maybe.
Is it required?
Like, I'm sure it is. Maybe that's why I'm not like J.K. Rowling yet, but I think, I mean, that's where at least my traveling and moving around kind of gets a bit in the way. Sure, I know people all over, but I also don't always have the chance to deepen connections just because I'm kind of like, this was real, but bye. So that's a bit of like, it's both. Like, I get to meet a lot of people, but you don't get to like follow up as much. Yeah,
I feel very similarly, especially on the whole like moving around and never developing deeper things. And I don't know. I take issue again. I've taken a lot of issues today, but I take issue with the whole concept of networking. Like, to me, it is, and this is just another probably gimmick word, connecting. It's making relationships, not necessarily about work. One of the things I always try to like remind myself of is you don't have to network with, I mean, it's good to, but you don't have to with people that are already in the industry. Sometimes peer networking can be just as valuable. Making friends among your cohort, among what you're currently studying, because who knows where they're going to be in 3 years.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like, we're the future.
Yeah. And so, and at the end of the day, you don't consider, going to get lunch with one of your friends in your course to be networking. That's just connecting with someone. Yeah, but at the same time, it serves the exact same purpose.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm here because we decided to grab coffee that first day of school. Like, it just kind of happened.
Right. So, I take issue with this whole that networking and like kind of categorizing networking and friendships and relationships into separate thing. Like, it's all one and the same.
I think people don't want to see friendships as business necessarily. That's probably what it is. It makes them feel better at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So they can all sleep at night.
Anyways, so here's the big question that I pop on everyone on this show. Do you see yourself as a creative person?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Wow. So it's a lot of people that I have on the show that I would consider creative oftentimes get really defensive, like, I don't really think I am, or like, no, I wouldn't claim that. You do. That's totally fine. I consider myself creative as well. How would you define creativity and how you kind of fit in that?
Defining it. I don't know if you necessarily can. I think creativity is a lot of tapping into your sensibilities, your emotions, and bringing that out into the world in a format, to go back to that, whether it is, music or painting or writing in my case.
Right.
So I think that's kind of what creativity, at least to me, is, and I'm definitely a very, like, emotional and sensitive person in a lot of ways, and that's kind of why I started writing as well when I was little, because it was like an outlet for me. Mm-hmm. So I think I fit my own definition of it very well.
Interesting. Yeah. Are you in the camp that you think everyone is creative?
I think...
Or do you think some people are not creative, some people are creative?
I think people have the potential, but they might not be in touch with it. Like, I like some very, like, rational and logistical people who just, like, would never let themselves, like... I think it takes a certain loss of control to be creative, whether it's of your emotions or of what you're putting out there. Like, you can't censor yourself the entire time.
Yeah.
And I think there's some people who would really struggle with that. Mm-hmm. But I think in them, in some ways, there is some level of creativity.
Yeah. Really interesting. And yeah, I think there's all these... I'm in a class, and the reason I started this podcast is called... there's this class called Contextualizing Creativity that I'm in, and we talk about these things, these definitions, whether it's a broad thing that everybody has or something that like a select few have. And I think the research has really concluded that this idea of like the artistic genius is total bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not true at all. It is, like you say, kind of just a capacity that people need to unlock within themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about art.
Okay.
Yeah, another deep subject.
Covering a lot for a Tuesday morning.
Yeah, we are. We're like just skipping right
criticizing
through it.
kings, artistic liberties, networking.
Do you consider yourself artistic? Is that the same as creative?
I don't know. I think I wouldn't say I'm good at it, but I think so in some ways. Like, even I had a struggle with, for me, artistic. I was always like thinking of paintings or painters, and I cannot even draw a straight line, so that's not my vibe. But I do think I have an artistic sensibility, if you want to put it like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's not mutually exclusive with creativity ever, but I also don't think they're hand in hand all the time.
Interesting. What do you think the difference is between the two?
I think artistic is more the way you express it, maybe, or creativity is like the source of it, and artistic is almost like the outside world.
Yeah.
Like, I think artisticness has something to do with how, like, the audience or the reception of it, sort of. Not necessarily whether it's good or bad, but just putting it out there. While creativity is almost like an emotion to me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
An emotion. You've mentioned emotions a couple times throughout this interview. Do you see that as integral to your work? Do you see that as integral
for sure.
to creative work at large?
Yeah, actually, it was interesting because with writing, actually, someone the other day told me, I don't know if it's a quote from somewhere or something, but it was like, was it not all writers are sad, but all sad people write? Mm-hmm. And I think there is, like, huge truth to that, at least especially in writing. I do think, I mean, you think about it, even just journaling is literally based on your emotions, and that's a hugely artistic or creative output. So I think, like, it is to writing in most of my experiences. Journalism aside, obviously, if you're just reporting on, like, a war crisis, I don't know how emotional that is. Then you kind of have to keep the emotions out of it. But in the kind of creative writing I do, for sure, I think it is a huge integral part to it.
Interesting. I went to a talk earlier this year from a film director, and one thing he mentioned, he was a writer-director, is that his best work is made when he is not happy.
Yes, that's so true.
Do you agree? See, I think that notion is romantic and probably true, but to me it seems problematic that you have to be in these mental states to be able to create something good. Do you think it's possible to kind of create something? Let's say you're not emotional. Let's say your head is screwed on as tight as it possibly can be one day. You sit down with a blank page. Do you, and this is fine to answer it however you want, but do you legitimately believe that your work would be better on a day where you were deep in your emotions and sad and whatnot?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, like, for example, for my ghostwriting, no, because that is a lot more mechanical about it.
Yeah.
I do tend to go back and refine certain scenes when I'm in a different emotional state, but that, for example, is very much just, it doesn't really matter what kind of mental mindset I'm in. Maybe it's even better if I'm a bit more balanced that day. But other than that, yeah, for sure. I mean, like how they say, like, people with mental illnesses, like depression and stuff, tend to be more creative, like by like 4 times or something like that. So I do think there is definitely something to being in a dark place and writing. I mean, there's a reason so many writers are alcoholics. It's not that they're happy.
Right.
And I do think there's definitely something about being in touch with that part of yourself.
Do you think the premise, though, is problematic and like kind of exclusive in a way? Like, because, like, ideally, right, our society is going to get to a place where people are emotionally stable, people don't suffer from, well, let's think about it, where people don't suffer from mental illnesses.
Yeah.
Are you saying, and again, just challenging you here, that that society would be less creative?
No, because you can have, like, everyone has good or bad days, even if you're balanced. You know, like, let's say you go through a breakup. Even that can be enough to spur a huge burst of creativity. I don't think it needs to be, like, you're in a really, really dark place for it. I think just, like, everyday emotions. Like, I've definitely written some things that seem on paper like I was going through really rough things, and ultimately it was just, like, I was stressed with school or something. Like, it's not even...
Yeah.
I think that's where creativity comes in, tapping into an emotion and making it something else, or bigger or smaller, whichever it is.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think that a balanced society would lack creativity. I think maybe not everyone. People might, like, feel like less the need to put it out there, but generally I think, you know, we're artistic creatures in some way. We all appreciate art, whether it's a song or this or that, and I think people will always be able to tap into that.
Yeah.
Because things happen in life. You know, people die, people break up, and the world is a dark place sometimes. So, like...
Yeah. And I do want to put it out there, too. I certainly think that... I do agree with you to an extent. I find the notion to be troubling that someone has to go through these emotional states. Obviously, like, a lot of art is expression.
Yeah.
It's communicating something. And typically you do want to communicate something specific. And... contentness isn't like a very specific emotion or something that's, you know, everybody is connecting with, because not everybody's content. But I do think it can go in the opposite direction. I think you can be extremely joyful and something can come out of that creativity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Creatively, yeah. So, yeah, no, I do agree. I wonder if there's...
But I also feel
with
like looking at it that way, I see it as that, at least if I'm, let's say, in a really bad place, writing something is turning that darkness into something good.
Right.
So, like, I think you're looking at it as, like, a negative thing, but I think that's such a... then it's problematic, but I don't think it's, like, the basis of it in that way.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I just struggle with my agreeance.
I love how, like, you're trying to have this perfect world. People like you are what's going to make this world better one day.
No, don't say that. But I agree. And I used to always talk about my improv rehearsals. I still do talk about it, kind of in this way, but it's my weekly therapy.
Yeah, for sure.
And as someone that used to go to therapy, like it's honestly usually better than just sitting down with someone and talking through my issues.
Yeah.
I get to go on stage and pretend I'm a dinosaur for an hour, and that releases something. Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, like, I'm a big proponent of, I think everyone can benefit from therapy, no matter how happy you think you are. Yeah. Everyone can, but this is like the cheaper version of it. Like, there needs to be said.
Not necessarily. That is a whole nother rant. You know what? I'm going to go on that rant. Improv, getting into it, it's such a pay-to-play system. You've got to pay to take classes. You've got to pay to even perform sometimes. It's bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Take advantage of college societies like I am. Take advantage. Take advantage of auditions. Don't end up in an endless stream of classes that improv troupes and theaters will sell to you. That's the end of my pitch. Yeah.
Not my world, but I'm gonna, if I ever meet another improv person, make sure they know that. See, that's the thing. As a writer, I need, sure, classes help, but, like, I need a pen or a laptop, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Or classes, of course, but...
No, I mean, yeah, it is an interesting concept. And I was talking about this yesterday with somebody about, like, entrepreneurism in general. There's so many motivational things you can watch, or YouTube series. Oh my God,
it's almost too much
There's
sometimes.
Classes and departments of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But the entrepreneurs, they're not going to be in these classes. They're going to be out
so true.
entrepreneuring. Like, what is the point of going into it? Yeah, you got to do this stuff. Anyways, whole other discussion.
Issue.
Yeah. Here's a hardball question.
Like, these were fine. But yes, hit me, Clay.
What are the boundaries of art? I had a conversation. I know that's a big question. I'm going to try and boil it down for you. I had a conversation recently about whether game design counts as art, whether the mechanics of chess are artistic the same way a novel is, or the same way a painting is, the mechanics of a board game or a video game. Where does art stop and something else begin?
I think. Wow. Okay.
Let's let that hit.
Thank God I had my coffee. I think that's also like in the eye of the beholder, as they say, in the way of like, you know, like if you look at modern art, there's sometimes you will literally be in like so my mom is the head of a museum in Switzerland, and there was one exhibition where there was like just these cardboard boxes, and I was quite young, and I was like, okay, Mom, like take out the trash. And she was like, no, this is an artistic piece about, I don't even know what it was representing. To me, I didn't see it as that, but there were other people who stood there and were staring at it and were like, wow, this cardboard box, you know, like the way it's done. And I think that applies to anything. Like, if you can see the artistic side in it, I think like, yeah, maybe not the strategy of a chess game, but
okay, I want to get in on that because I'm curious why not?
The strategy of a chess game?
Yeah.
I think, well, I was like, it depends on, I think there's so much logic involved to that. And also I think just the word strategy sort of doesn't,
so let me,
the artisticness out of it.
Yeah, let me back up a little bit. Okay. What I'm talking about is not necessarily like the playing of chess.
Okay.
Although I think some people would define the playing of chess as an art, or the playing of a sport as an art. Like, you hear that dialogue all the time.
That depends, though. I think, like, that's more an art, as in it's, like, it's, like, very special in what it is. I think there's a difference between using art in that way as an expression versus art that you would see from creatives.
Right. That's an interesting distinction. We'll get back to that. When I was referring to chess, I was referring to, like, the rules themselves, the design of the game. And we mentioned earlier that art is a form of expression. Chess is expressing, you know, medieval wartime in a way.
True.
Yeah. If we look at, like, the design of a modern board game, Monopoly, what is that expressing? The greed and monopolistic capitalism of, like, the 1920s or whenever. And in its design, in the rules, in the way it's written, is that art. Not so much the way it's played. Because the creators are designing these games to be an experience to the person playing. They're designing it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I guess this gets to a broader question of, is design art? You know, are the stairs in this bush house, is that art because someone took the time and decided where to curve off the end of each step?
I think the process might have been artistic, but I don't know if there's a society that stares at the bush house stairs all day as art and interprets it. So I think, like, it can be artistic, the process of creating it. But also when you said, you know, like with chess, it represents, like, medieval war times. I think things like that are more of a representation. And that gets to the question of, is representation art or, like, replication? Is that art? Like, that's another very much discussed question in the field as well. Like Walter Benjamin was talking about that. Like, is mechanical reproduction, does that count as new art?
Hey folks, unfortunately towards the end of that recording we had some technical issues that resulted in the last few questions being cut off. We apologize about the issue, but a huge thank you to Andrina for coming on the show. We will see you next time. Have a good one.